If you've had any cryptid encounters that you'd like me to share on here, email me at jttosstories@gmail.com. Story 1. This happened a few months ago, and I've kept it to myself until recently when I told my dad about it. I was with my brother, who we'll call John for now, and one of our old friends, and we were walking back through a forest, back to where we came from. Since I'm younger than both of them, they tend to annoy me a lot, but this time they were being really annoying, so I decided to walk ahead. I was about halfway between them and the exit to the forest when I heard things snapping on my left. I just brushed it off and kept walking, but then I started to hear a low mumbling noise, so I stopped and looked around. I asked if anyone was there and got no reply until about 30 or 40 seconds later, I heard what sounded like my brother saying, "Come here, I need your help." So I asked what was wrong while keeping my distance because something about his voice sounded wrong, like it was somehow distorted. So I waited a few seconds, then he said again, "Come here, I need your help." But in the exact same way as before, so I moved to the side and that's when I saw it. It was a deer, but it was on its back legs and its body was rigid and twisted. But the worst part was its eyes. They were exactly the same as mine. I didn't believe it. It was a bad creature, but it actually seemed quite friendly, but nonetheless, I was scared, so I ran a mile back, and the whole time, I could feel it behind me, and when I got out of the forest, I fell to my knees and looked back to see it just disappear behind some trees. But here's the weird thing. Ever since then, I've been having dreams, but not about being chased by it or anything in the dreams. So I told my dad about this, and he didn't look surprised or confused at all. He told me of a similar event he had when he was young. If you want to hear about that, let me know. But still, to this day, I remember how I felt threatened and what it looked like. And how it was like I was looking at myself, but through a filter. This was the first time I saw it, but I doubt that it will be the last. Story 2. I'm a vet student. My university is on top of a hill and outside of town. From my dorm window, on the 7th floor, I can see huge wheat fields and the nearby forest. My first encounter was 2 years ago. I have a German Shepherd named Hades and a Husky pup named Ragnar. The day I left university, it was quite late. It was already dark outside. Usually, I don't mind taking them out at night. At night, I can let them run without their leashes. They are trained, and I know that both of them are going to listen to me. Besides, I knew that everyone knew them and wouldn't hurt them even if they were left outside. They have collars that light up since Hades is fully black and Ragnar is fully white, which makes it hard to see him during the winter. I could see them the full time. We walked for a while, and they were playing and running around. At some point, Hades stopped and started growling, looking into the wheat fields down the hill. I didn't think about it. There were bats, owls, and other critters around us. I leashed them, not wanting to run after them if they decided to chase something. After half an hour of nonstop growling, I had had enough of it and decided to take Hades home and go out so Ragnar can run a bit more. I got home and expected him to go into his cage. He likes sleeping there. That night, though, all he did was stand at the window looking out. Since the pup was whining, wanting to go out again, I tried to drag Hades in the cage and lock him in until I got back. Who knew? Maybe he might try going out the window. I got a look out the window. On the parking lot below, I saw a black figure circling the cars. Thinking that it might be someone trying to steal something, I got a flashlight and shone at it. It wasn't a thief. It wasn't even a human at all. It looked up, its eyes reflecting the light from the flashlight. It was black, its head looking very similar to Hades. It was standing on all fours, but when I shone the light on it, it stood up. the roofs of the cars were barely reaching its midsection. It let out a growl, which I later learned that many of the tenants have heard. Hades went wild trying to bust out of the cage. Ragnar was whining even louder. I realized he didn't want to go out. He was trying to get as far away from the window as possible. The growl made me flinch, and I dropped the flashlight through the window. I tried to see it again, but it was too dark, and I heard the crunching of snow as it left. The next morning, I went to find my flashlight and found huge dog-like footprints in the snow and a foul smell still lingering. I borrowed infrared binoculars from a hunter friend of mine. Ever since then, I've seen it in the forest, crossing the field, and coming near the hill looking up. I and my friends have been taking turns keeping watch at night when Hades starts growling. I don't take the dogs out at night, and Ragnar doesn't play and run around anymore. He just stays pressed against my feet. Story 3. Okay, I'll go straight to the point. This is not my story, but my dad's story that he once told me. So back in the late 70s, my dad was working in a lumber mill in Samarinda, Borneo, Indonesia, doing lumber mill related work. Then he said one day he saw a crowd of people gathering around what appeared to be a makeshift cage made by locals. What really surprised him was inside the cage was a big primate standing upright, around 2 meters tall, or 6'6", 6'7", according to his account. The hair color of this primate is similar to the orangutan. What was even weirder was the primate creature seemed to be crying. So how did the ape fella end up there, you might ask? My father asked a local about the primate, and one of them said one day a man from the nearby village went missing when hunting, so the villagers went into the forest in order to find him. During the search, one of them found a large footstep. It was so huge that it could not have been a human. So they split into smaller parties to follow the track, and to their surprise, the missing guy was found on a tall tree, tied up in what seemed to be a nest of some primate. So they helped him, and he told them that he was kidnapped by an upright standing ape. Villagers got curious, and the next day they formed another search party to search for the ape instead. I don't know how, but my dad said somehow they found it, and that is how it ended up in the cage. My dad didn't know what happened to the ape, but some of his colleagues said that the villagers killed it to avoid more victims of kidnappings. The primate creature was female. The villagers speculated that it kidnapped the man to have some companionship, to put it one way. And that's the end of my dad's story. Now, I know it doesn't behave like the usual Bigfoot I heard in stories. That's why I think it's a good idea to share the story here to find out what you guys think about it. You guys have any similar stories with a similar creature? Let me know. I'd love to hear them. Story 4. I was born and raised in Texas. Northeast Texas, to be specific. I live and work in Longview and have enjoyed hunting and fishing all of my life. I'm almost 50 now, and this encounter took place when I was 19. My father was quite the outdoorsman, and I feel lucky to have traveled the globe hunting along his side. He and I have hunted and or fished on 3 continents, but this trip was only about an hour east near the Louisiana border. My dad, lifelong friend of his, and yours truly, were dove hunting right outside of Uncertain, Texas. Yes, that is an actual town. It was the evening hunt, and we were hunting at a small pond that was at the edge of an open pasture, but the other side was thick with massive pines and cypress trees. We all noticed that the majority of birds were flying in from behind us, and by the time we saw them, they were over the water. So I figured if I snuck around to the other side, I would get them coming straight at me. Dad and Boyd circled to the left, and I went to the right with my dog. 10 minutes into the trek, Apple, my dog, stopped and, nose pointed in the air, then directly whimpered and backtracked back to the truck. I called for him a couple times, only to get no response. I noticed up ahead, maybe 20 or 30 yards, was a huge cypress tree with a stump of an even bigger one closer to the water. Good spot, I thought. As I got approximately 20 feet away from that stump, it turned around and glared at me, then directly stood up and rotated its body facing me. It was a classic description, at least 7 feet tall, and if I were to guess, I would say 350 to 450 pounds in weight. It was dark brown/gray in color and just huge in general. I briefly looked to my left and could see my dad and Boyd directly across the pond, 75 to 100 yards away. I looked back in front of me, and all I saw was the movement of grasshoppers flying away from bushes moving. If you ever spend any time outdoors, you know what I'm describing with this exit. I turned and ran so fast to the company of my fellow hunters, never looking back. I told my dad about my encounter, and we looked in the general area where the stump was, but never saw a glimpse after that day. I've heard of sightings in this area, but for some reason, a skeptic I remain. I know what I saw, but it's hard to rationalize the events that day. I've dreamt of that encounter 4 or 5 times since, and it's always the same. It's the what-ifs that haunt me. If I had the camera, would I have been able to catch a clear video or photo? Where did he go? Are there more? Why has no one ever recovered bones or a carcass? We find skulls of creatures that are thousands of years old. Why is this one so elusive? Happy hunting.